by one and go through the report that Jaime has prepared. So maybe Jaime could pull the report up on screen. Now we're being recorded. That's good. So Jaime, can you put the report on screen? I think the best thing is just to run through the end of session report. And please, I mean, we have a week to pass any comment, but it is good to see it on screen as we go. I think it's been a very productive week, and we've had some good documents being concluded and some very near conclusion. So here we go, a report of the 15th session of ENG. So we had 111 participants from 30 countries. That's a good number. 16 new participants. That's lower than usual, which is interesting. And we had our input papers, and we've produced 16 output documents that have all been up on the silent approval. And we will go through those, the outline of those in a moment. Okay, so we reviewed the following recommendations on effective intensity and training certification, and the following guidelines there. But again, we'll come to these in the working group specific reports. So we looked at guidelines on calculation of effective intensity, third-party service providers, solar modules, high accuracy positioning and ranging, and the read transmission of SPAS corrections, and the ERPS radar positioning system. And we had liaison notes going out via council to them on the sustainability workshop, nominal range definition, R mode standardization, IMO position on VDES, and 1 to RTCM on R mode messages, and a change of date proposal for the Heritage Lighthouse program. And we have some intersessional work planned by the various working groups, which people are welcome to join in. And we have further work here on the intersessional work there, which again, we're welcome to join. And then we have the traffic light report, and perhaps you could, I think the working group chairs and task group leaders, the task group leaders are really the unsung heroes here. With myself, Michelle, and the working group chairs get a good mention, but the task group leaders beaver away, pulling together their respective teams and deliver the goods. So thank you. So if you could just check the progress on the traffic light report, and there's a little description at the bottom of what each color means. And normally at this stage, pretty much everything would have been green, but with the COVID, we were set back a bit, but we've had 2 extra sessions. I've lost your screen, Jaime. Is that me or?
It should come back.
Thank you. So hopefully by the end of by the end of ENG15, many of the yellows, or some of the yellows, will have turned to green. But I think we should be pleased with the overall output from ENG. So. It's good to see Working Group 3 starting on the worldwide radio navigation plan. I see you made a quick start on that this time. And some things have crept in the work plan. There's the legend for the descriptors. Some things have crept in like autonomous shipping and maritime services, which weren't on the original task list. Okay. So then we have the table of contents. and the report proper. So, okay, so sorry, Jaime, I just was looking at my system here. So we started off with the general structure of the meeting, and then we had the welcome from Francis Zachariah, the Secretary General, and we approved the agenda. And we had apologies and introductions. And we had the the locality of the participants, and good to keep an eye on that and see where people are coming from. And then the rogues gallery of who was where. So I ran through the working arrangement and the patents statement. And Jaime reminded us of the style guide, and it's good to see a common format coming through now as we all start to become more familiar with the presentation style of our documents. And I think we all recognize the value of that. Then we were talking about the different working groups and review of action items. The input papers, and we allocated them to the various work groups. And then we had the reports from the various bodies, from the Ayala Council. And here's for those of you feeding back to your organizations, there's a summary of the recommendations and guidelines and documents that were approved at the council. Okay, and then we discussed the Heritage Lighthouse Award, which seems to be well established now, which is nice. And then we had the Policy Advisory Panel and the new Technical Documents Catalogue. Referenced sustainability and the very positive feedback we had from the Policy Advisory Panel for the work done in this committee on sustainability, which we will hear a bit more, but it has led to the development of a workshop. And just a bit of extra feedback on that, I emailed the chairs of the other committees, and they were very positive because we've asked for a representative, and just had a quick chat with Dave Scott there, who will represent the industrial members. We're looking to do this in November 2023. So we thought about November this year, but felt it was too quick. But it should get some good publicity at the General Assembly. And I think it'll be a very interesting and uplifting workshop. Then Michelle Cuscoa, Vice Chairman, took us through the work plan which will take the committee up to 2027. That's been open for comment some time now, and will go to Council and then General Assembly for final approval. Then we discussed the mass task group, and you will recall the request that ENAV run or develop the guideline, and each committee puts in various sections and paragraphs relevant to their expertise. And the topics allocated to ENG are PNT and position augmentation, which would be to Working Group 3, power availability, which would be to Working Group 2, and then conventional aids on visibility to mass, which covers really Working Groups 1 and 2 with radar, reflectors, and lights and potential use of lights. So there's some interesting topics there for us all to get our teeth into as we develop this guideline with ENAV. But I think by the time we get to ENG15, I think that guideline will have been developed a bit further by ENAV, and we'll have something to sort of work definitely on. Then Minsu took us through the IMO meetings and gave us an update on discussions there and the various IMO committee meetings. Then we had a liaison meeting with the International Hydrographic Office, discussing the points referenced here. We have a good relationship with IHO and very productive meetings there. And then we had some input from the International Telecommunications Union to allocate the spectrum frequencies. And of course, all these organizations we deal with when we're trying to develop new technologies like R-mode or radar positioning, they're all organizations we have a good relationship with, and we enjoy that and look to develop that. RTCM, the organization tasked with standardization of electronic messaging and standards, and again, good discussion with them. And then PIANC, who look at ports and waterways. PIANC are a very historic organization and quite large worldwide. And then we had the ESBN tsunami monitoring, and we're looking to add some guidance in that under the complementary use of ATOM, where ATOM can be used for advanced warning of tsunamis. Okay, and the rapporteurs, I think we need to review that moving into next year. We haven't been successful within our committee of having a vibrant rapporteur section, so I think the chair, vice chair, and working group chairs, perhaps we think again on how we bring in emerging technology and points of interest to the committee. It's all out there. It's just about how we capture that and inform the members. But we haven't been successful in that. But it's coming through other ways. Then we had a very interesting suite of presentations for those who were able to join, covering a raft of topics there. Very good one from Ling Yan from China about setting the benchmark for calculating luminous intensity and getting the settings right. Then we looked at tsunami monitoring, practical experience from Samir Benuda, and then ATOM distribution in the huge port of Tianjin, China, and how that is been put into practice. And then again from China, very interesting about Raycon testing and the results from the practical testing of Raycons in rivers. And Michelle Hopper and Stefan Weiss gave us an update on R-mode, and Guillermo Fernandez on the SBAS standardization for maritime receivers, which is happening. And I think, if I remember, early next year, we should have type approval for that for maritime use. And then Marcos gave us an update on the shipborne receivers for Galileo, which was interesting to hear that coming through. And then finally, Jacques Marchand, a presentation on the 200-year celebration from the Fresnel lens, which was developed for Cordouin Lighthouse. And I hadn't realized that, but it's a great benchmark for the Working Group 4 to use as part of to celebrate the history and culture and the technical developments going back 200 years. Yeah, very good. So then we looked at each working group chair gave an overview as to what they were hoping to cover this ENG, and we split ourselves into working groups. Okay, and then I think I'm about to invite Malcolm or Alwyn. I don't know who is speaking. Is that the next? Is to run through the working group reports, which timing will come down to. Okay, so Malcolm, are you able to take the microphone, and Jaime will keep the screen?
I am.
Okay, so over to Malcolm Nicholson, and a big thank you, Malcolm, to you and Alwyn for chairing Working Group 1 and all your task group leaders. Some really interesting discussion that I ended up having to phone Alwyn just to clarify a point here and get my memory correct there. So really interesting stuff. So over to you, Malcolm.
Thanks, Simon. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. I hope that in October we're all able to meet up in person. We, as Working Group 1, consider the visual and the physical ATON. We had 4 sessions over the period of ENG15. We had our opening plenary in early March with a working group session thrown in. And then we had a couple of working group sessions and then finished off just on Tuesday there with a working group session and closing. So the great thing about meeting virtually is that we attract more members. We had 19 members this time, which I think is a record for Working Group 1, because normally we only have about 10 or 11. So that was excellent, and I strongly encourage those people that were able to attend virtually to attend in person if they can. Of course, we all understand the restrictions and everything else, but if you can, it would be wonderful. We had 10 input papers, and of course, some of them were for information, whilst the others were inputs into the work that we're doing into developing the guidelines and recommendations. But the main aim of the session was to continue along the work program and deliver the tasks that we've been assigned to. We did have, I think we had 3 input papers that were not on the work program. They were picked up by the sleuths in our working group. And the first one was a minor amendment to guideline 1135 on the determination and calculation of effective intensity, which was a minor error to the peak to effective intensity factor tables. So we've amended that. We put it forward for silent approval, and we hope that it goes forward to council for approval. The next one was, again, I think there was a little bit of confusion about the some of the recommended parts of R204. And so we added an additional statement in there to make it quite clear that the effective intensity should be calculated on the lowest flash of a train of flashes. So that's in there, and that's gone through silent approval process, and we hope that that goes through to council for approval. We had quite an interesting input paper from Estonia Patel with regard to the definitions of the ranges of ATON lights. And this was more to do with the definition of, or the nomenclature of nautical miles. Please excuse me, my daughter is just coming back and my dog's going a bit mad. I knew this would happen just when I was speaking. So we had draft liaison note back to the ARM committee to talk about these definitions and what we felt was an appropriate amendment to the definitions. So I hope you've all had time to digest that and approve that. And finally, we considered the input paper from Qingjing Li with regards to the optical performance of bridge lighting, which is a fascinating topic. It's often something, even though Ayala has guidance on bridge lighting, I guess it is more considered inland waterways in some respects, but with the build-up of background lighting and shore lighting, they can often be confused. And so it was a very interesting paper, and we did discuss it within our working group, and Xinjiang indicated that he was going to do further experiments on this topic, which was fascinating. So we're requesting him to put an input paper into ENG16, and either as an input paper or perhaps a presentation at ENG16, and we'll move forward from then. And whether we can cover it in the existing documentation or whether it warrants a guideline in its own right is yet to be debated. But really going now through the tasks, we have decided to defer the guideline on port traffic signals to the next work program, even though we have updated the recommendation and felt that those were still extant after the excuse me. We sent out a questionnaire to the members, and we came back with the feedback that it was all extant, and so that was good. So we do need to develop some guidance on how you can achieve that recommendation, which I think is the main aim of the committee. We had a good session on the development of the leading lines, or the revision of the leading lines recommendation and guidelines and the software. And I must give a big shout out to Frank Herman and Partel Keskalou for the work that they've done intersessionally. It was a really good working session. And actually, one of the things that came up during the meeting, or during that task group session, was bearing in mind that we're moving towards an IGO, the software that's freely available on the Ayala website is mostly engineering orientated. You have the solar calculator, you've got a mooring calculator, there's a buoy lights simulator, and the leading lines Excel spreadsheet. And the sort of the warranty or liability statements associated with that software differs with each application. And so we had quite an interesting discussion with regard to that. And so the chairman, Simon, you have an action to bring this issue, if you like, to the attention of the PAP committee, and see what we can come up with, because there may be some legal implementation, legal implications towards Ayala. So we hope that will be a fruitful discussion at the next PAP meeting.
I've got note of that. Thank you. Yeah, Malcolm, I'll put that input to PAP, and that will be duly discussed. So thank you for raising that.
We have some tasks here that have been referred to the next work program in the LED technologies and the guideline on light sources. We had a semi-session, if you like, on the measurement, and in fact we had a couple of input papers from China. Ling Yang is very keen to progress this guideline on the measurement of aids navigation. However, we can't begin that work until we've finalized the recommendation on the terms of measurement. So in that instance, we've requested that, and perhaps this is a bit unusual given the COVID circumstances and everything else, I've actually requested that in order not to lose these vital inputs to the progression of this work, that we can forward them to ENG17, which would be the start of the next work program. So we don't lose these vital input papers. So we hope that works. And I'm happy to take guidance on anything else. But we do have a special request for Alwyn to input a paper on the topics for a suite of guidelines. So the original premise of E200 recommendations was to provide a suite of recommendations to guide to give recommendations to all members on how you go about providing physical ATON and visual ATON. But now we've sort of tightened up those recommendations to a 1 or 2 page statement, as you like. We need to develop the guidance to support that. So Alwyn's going to put in a paper about how we can support these recommendations with a suite of guidelines, and it may well come to that, which is excellent. We did spend, Jaime, if you can move on to 9.6 now, we did spend a good session on developing the new recommendation on terms of measurement. This is, I can't really overemphasize the importance of this recommendation. And I'm really happy that the working group has had some very robust discussions on these essentially definitions of performance characteristics of visual ATON. And but we are getting there. It has taken more or less the full work program to work on this. And yeah, again, I'd like to thank Alwyn for his work, Ling Yang for her input, Frank for his input. It really is, this will be the standard, if you like. And so to that end, Alwyn is going to put a paper in on some of the environmental conditions, if you like, so the standard measurement conditions, and we hope that we'll finish this recommendation at ENG16. So that's really quite exciting. We did have an input paper on optical performance, but again, I'm requested to continue to work on the guideline and put another paper into ENG16. Effective intensity was completed. Monitoring function degradation is moved to the next work program. Service factors was completed as it was incorporated into guideline G1148. We completed the guidance on color fading, and I'm quite hopeful that there'll be an abstract submitted to the conference on the practical application of that guidance. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be a very interesting presentation at Rio. We completed the calculation of intensity. We've deferred the sector lights to the next work program. And the final thing to say is, although we did a great deal of work on preparing a workshop here in Australia, where we would like to welcome everybody, it was postponed until the next work program. So I really hope that that can happen during the next work program. And all that remains for me to say is thank you very much to my working group, and I hope to see you all in person and have a little beer with you in October. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Malcolm, and a good run through your work there. Some really interesting outputs and further work planned. So a big thank you, Malcolm and Alwyn, and your whole working group there, working group 1. Okay, so now we move on to, yes, hopefully Australia will be able to host the 8 on engineering workshop in 2024 maybe, and I think we will restart discussions and see if that is still on offer. So now we move to working group 2, and I think I see Peter has come on the screen. So Peter Schneider and Jörg Unter der Weide, with great effort and support, have delivered some good work here. So Peter, can we hear all about it, please?
I think Jörg would like to start, and I'm busy with the second part here then after Jörg's.
Okay,
So
fine.
Words.
Over to you.
as usual, we share our work. So I'll do the introduction. So thanks to all participants that participated in our task groups. We had a strong group of about 30 members from several countries, and we had 17 group sessions where the task groups did their work. We reviewed 10 input papers and incorporated them in the existing tasks. The overview of our task is...
Can I just butt in here? My apologies. Jaime, we're not seeing the document on screen, or are we?
I can see it.
I also can see it.
Okay, I do beg your pardon. It was my screen setting. My apologies, Jörg. Over to you. Sorry.
That's fine. So the overview of our task is mentioned in the table at the beginning of our report. And we'll just focus on that task we worked on in this session. So thank you for all the hard work that has been done. And the result was that we could finalize 3 guidelines and 1 recommendation for council approval. The first task I will mention is the guideline on third-party quality control. We received a liaison note from ARM and incorporated the suggested amendments. And within that session, we could finalize the guideline to council for approval. So thanks to Dave Scott, who led this work, and also thanks to David Jeffkins and Greg Hansen, who did a lot of work in preparing that document. The next task group was led by Mariano Mapegan from Argentina, and he was also supported from Sarah from the UK
Robinson.
and Sarah Robinson, yeah. And they had some fruitful meetings and good progress on the extreme environmental conditions. So on aids to navigation in extreme environmental conditions. They added content and images to the several sections that are mentioned here, and also an important step was done in comparing the guideline on structural design on ATONs, which was finalized in the last meeting, to make sure that the content of both guidelines is complementary and that there is no big overlap. And Sarah did that work. And Jaime, if you scroll a little bit down, we'll find it here in the paragraph. So thanks to Sarah doing that. And we have good progress here, and also planned 2 additional intersessional meetings for further progress. If everything is running well, so we intend to finalize it in the next meeting, but not, we also have put it into the next work plan so that we have the freedom to prolong this task if necessary or if there's any substantial feedback. Next task, that was a little bit a difficult task. It was develop guideline on meteorological and oceanographical data dissemination. That was a task that we took in our work plan after the first meeting in this period, and we did we made a draft and did some first collection of input. We had contact to the ARM committee and received some fundamental changes, and so we had discussions in the last meeting and in this meeting, and due to the fact that also the participation and the interest in that work was quite poor, we decided to keep the content and put it in guidelines that are on the next work plan, the guideline on complementary use of ATON and the guideline G1008 on remote control and monitoring to keep the valuable input. But we decided to cancel this task because it's easier to work on the two mentioned guidelines than building a new guideline on that part. We agreed that with the chair, and so that task was cancelled from the actual and the upcoming work plan. Peter, will you take over for solar panels?
Yes, of course. So the next is 10.4 here. It is task 2.4.1 regarding solar panels. And this task is led by Peter Dobson from Trinity House. During ENG15, we held 3 meetings, and this time we had a lot of participants all over the world, and we got a lot new input. But we had also intersessional work on this guideline, and it was also almost finished. And so we did some editorial checks, and then we thought about the title, whether the title is right or not. And when we had the idea to change the title a little bit, and now the title is Solar Modules for a Marine Environment. And the guideline was finalized during ENG15 and submitted for silent approval. And it should be forwarded to Council for approval. And I think the guideline is very good. It is a great overview, especially regarding solar modules for the marine environment. And thanks to Peter Dobson and to all colleagues who participated on this work on the guideline. Yeah. The next one is, Hemi, could you scroll up a little bit? Thanks. It's about the task 2.5.1, develop guidance quantifying characteristics to meet nautical and operational requirements and ways to verify them. It's quite a long title. And the last ENG14, we decided to put also the task 2.5.3 into this task as a chapter in the guideline. And the task is led by Gillian Burns and Rob Dale. And for the old task 2.5.3, which becomes a chapter in this guideline, Richard Vermeer is in charge of this work, but he was apologized during ENG15, so there was no work on this task. Between ENG14 and 15, we had 2 intersessional meetings, and during ENG15, we also had 2 meetings, and we had 18 participants from 11 countries, and we got a lot of additional content and also pictures for some chapters, and we did a review of some chapters, and further intersessional work is already planned. And I think Gillian did already a doodle call for some dates in June. Yeah, and further work will be done during ENG16. The next one, if you could scroll down, please, Amy, is regarding the radar reflector ones. That's one what I am in charge for. Between ENG14 and 15, we did a lot of work intersessionally with a small group, also with our radar specialist Mario Walter-Frank. And during ENG15, we had 3 meetings with 11 participants from 6 different countries. And we discussed and validated the actual document. And this time we also had a lot of new colleagues, also from Australia. Dave Scott was with us, China, France, Estonia, and we got really a lot of new input. And the outcome of ENG15 now is a completely newly structured document with a lot of additional content. And we need further intersessional work, a lot. And we need also to give additional orders for our company who is working on our simulations for this guideline. If there's interest, you can have a look into this guideline. We have a lot of simulated radar reflector diagrams in this guideline, and as you can see at first sight what's the behavior of some radar reflectors. And the goal is to finish it after ENG16. But I think if we do a little bit intersessionally, it could happen that it will be finished. And I think the last one is the next one is modern equipment. Maybe Jörg, you could say a little bit.
Yeah, so we had one session on the modern equipment in traditional lighthouses. This is a task that is also combined a little bit to working group 1. We had in that session, we had a discussion on the existing draft and developed it a little bit further, but this is one task that is prolonged to the next work period. And here we have also a request to all committee participants, if you have any projects or any experiences with modern equipment in traditional lighthouses, so please provide us an input paper on that. And I'm really happy. I have received yesterday an email from the China MSM from Guo Zhenyu, who is willing to support this work. So thank you for that. And so everyone is invited to provide input papers on experience and projects. The next topic is about Ayala Worldwide Academy. We had reviewed the guideline R0141 on training and certification of ATON personnel. We did that session together with Kevin Gregory, and we agreed to split the document into a recommendation, which carries the main content, and a guideline, which has all the details in it and could be easily changed if necessary without touching the recommendation. Both documents were finalized in that session and forwarded to Council for approval. So thanks for all contribution in this session and for the work to be done on both documents.
Okay.
We also have...
Okay.
Peter, please.
Yeah, okay. So the Telenometry Guidelines, the 1008, we had some intersessional meetings before ENG14 already, and we also had a meeting during ENG14 regarding this topic, and we found out that we need a better structure of the document and additional content, because there was a lot of development in the RCMS topic, and we also got some relevant papers, input papers. And then we decided it was too much work, and so we decided to postpone it to the next work plan, the next period. That's regarding this guideline. Jörg.
Okay. Progressing with 10.10. We received a very interesting input paper from Julio Fidel from Cuba on training for lighthouse keepers and ATON workers. And a few meetings ago, there was the idea raised to introduce a level 3 course as a low-level introduction to the ATON center. The initial idea was to have it for only a 1 day's training. What Julio is looking for is a training for people that will work in a specific lighthouse or work in the ATON sector that do not need a level 2 training, which is too much in detail, but they need a special course just to be introduced to the technology and equipment that is in their lighthouse or in their area they work in. We had some discussion, and we know that there are countries that do not have lighthouse keepers any longer, but there are also some countries, especially countries that do not participate in the ENG meetings, that have lighthouse keepers. And so we task Julio to collect the countries that are interested in such courses and such teaching, so such training, so that we could define what type of training is needed. So the idea was to provide training that is a little bit simpler as level 2 is today. We also discussed where to train the people and if it is useful to send them in other countries, but we decided it might be the best way to do the training in that country where the need is, or at the lighthouse where they will work. And so we had, I think, 2 action items in the bottom of that. One is to that we task Julio to identify the countries that have a need for these courses, and also like the Secretariat to forward that input paper that we could work on it in the next session. So thank you for all the work that has been done in this area. Oh. Yeah, that concludes for working group 2.
Jörg and Peter, thank you very much. Again, a great working session there and some really good outputs. And I wish the solar panels guideline had been around 10 years ago. That would have been really informative for me in those days, but Peter Dodson's the man for that. So moving on to working group 3, radio navigation. And I hand over to Alan Grant and perhaps Michelle Hopper, who's going to take us through that. Would that be you, Alan?
Yes, that'll be me. If you can hear me okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about the work that we've been doing. So on behalf of myself and Michelle, I'll start by saying thank you very much to all the participants. We didn't have a full count of the total number of participants, but somewhere in the region of sort of 35, something like that. But we had 9 different task groups. So again, thank you to the task leaders for their hard work and effort in progressing the different work items. We've got 3 updated guidelines. 2 are actually updated existing guidelines. One's a new guideline, and 3 liaison notes out of this period. But a lot of hard work and effort has been put in, and so thank you very much to everybody. So to go through the different topics, starting with the Resilient Pnt Guideline, the work on that has been progressed. We've still got more work to do between now and hopefully trying to finalise it at ENG16. So we've undertook to work via email intersessionally over the next few months with the idea of having a 1-day virtual workshop around sort of June time. But if you're interested in supporting the participation of that, please let me know. I will make sure you're included on the discussions. But the aim is to try and get that finished at ENG16. The next item, 321, task 321 was completed previously, so we'll talk about that. So moving on to R mode, and we discussed previously at an earlier meeting that we would focus on medium frequency R mode, so MFR mode, with our colleagues at ENAV looking at the VDES R mode capability. So we had a discussion within this committee where we were going and how things were progressing on the R mode guideline, and work on that has progressed. And again, there's work to be done between now and ENG16 to finalise it there. We considered an input or two input documents, one on a updated R-mode roadmap and potential new messages for support from RTCM, who define the broadcast standard for MF radio beacons. So we looked at how we can update and support new messages, new RTCM messages that could support the MF R-mode functionality. And we've got a couple of outputs that will come in a second from that. We considered R-mode standardization activities and the processes involved, who needs to be involved when, and how we can progress that. Identified really there's a need to work in partnership with ENAV to develop that. So we've developed a liaison note to go to ENAV, looking at how to progress that. And I believe that there is actually a meeting planned for tomorrow to look at some aspects of this. So out of this work, we've got a liaison note to go forward to ENAV, sorry, the first one. Really looking at the standardization activities. So how do we work together to make sure the standardization for the two components, the MF and the VDES components, work hand in hand? It makes sense to do that collectively. And a liaison note to go to RTCM with the initial set of designed messages that could be added to the RTCM message format in terms of supporting R-mode, and a request to start some collaboration there as to how to get that in the RTCM document sort of library. So hopefully they'll go through the silent assent process and be passed on. So task 323 really just encapsulates what I just said about the agreement to focus on the MF variant within ENG and allow our ENAV colleagues to support the VDES capability. But we do talk and keep in touch to make sure that everything's working together. The next task, 324, has been completed, the workshop on R-mode. That was very successful and has supported a lot of the work that we've got, including some of the standardization roadmaps and things like that. So that was really useful. The testbed coordination, that's a really interesting task. It's a chance to get all of the different interest parties to talk about the work that they've been doing on R-mode within their particular areas. And in this meeting, we had a couple of updates, one on the Baltic Sea testbed, and an update from both China and the Republic of Korea on the work that they've been doing. And that's really useful to make sure that all the developments are happening in sync and everybody's building on each other's expertise and experiences. So thank you everybody for sharing that. So changing tack slightly, the next topic was looking at product specifications. If you recall, we completed 2 product specifications at the last meeting that allowed our task leader Young Han and colleagues to develop and work on the S245. So that's the product specification supporting ELARAN ASF data. That work is in hand and is ongoing, again with the aim to have a draft version at the next meeting that we can review with an aim of trying to finalise and get out from there. So moving on to timing and synchronization, we have quite a broad range of different topics, as you'll see. Timing and synchronization work really started in earnest this meeting. I'm very grateful for the hard work of everybody moving that forward. It's a little bit late to the program, so this work will run over and into the new work program. But we're starting to make progress, and again, really grateful for everybody's input and support to that. So thank you. Moving to eRaycon, task 331. We had, you recall recently, the workshop on the enhanced radar positioning system, led by a number of people, but it'd be wrong not to name Paul Mueller and the hard work that he's put in on this topic. So thank you, Paul. The workshop was very successful, and from that we've been able to build on and finalise the guideline, which has been put through the silent assent, or is in the silent assent process, hopefully to go out from this meeting. Also in the process, developing a standardization plan. That was one of the topics within the workshop, was how do we actually look to standardize and who needs to be involved at what stage. So we're looking to develop that. And as part of that process, it's considering development of an IMO input paper, an information paper, looking at how do we raise the topic of resilient PNT and consider the different variants. So the original idea was to do a paper solely on the ERPS, but actually I think in hindsight we're looking to expand that and say, actually, how do we do a considered position on the different resilient PNT solutions? And that's something that we'll pick up further and develop to ENG16. We consider a number of papers on test information for next generation Raycons. And that led to an interesting discussion on Raycons of the future. What will that look like, and what do we then need to update and consider in terms of the wider documentation around the topic? And we'll pick that up further at ENG16. So the output of this work was to take the guideline on the enhanced radar positioning system forward to Council, assuming it passes the approval process. So thank you to everybody for the hard work on that. Moving on to satellite-based augmentation services, the task group there, led by Jose Manuel Alvarez, so thank you, Jose, was looking at comments that we'd received following ENG14 on the revised version of the guideline 1129. So the comments there were considered and updated, and we've got a finalised version of that standard, of that guideline, sorry, to go out from this meeting. So again, thank you to everybody involved in tidying that up and getting that ready. So moving on to the topic of marine radio beacon DGNSS, it's an interesting topic, this one. We've got a guideline in development. Thank you to Jesper and for leading the task group on this. It's covering both the different viewpoints of administrations and Ayala members that are looking to continue and develop the use of the DGNSS radio navigation equipment, the radio beacon equipment, and those that are looking to decommission. So it's quite a broad scope within that one guideline. But we had a number of discussions, and at previous meetings we had raised and received questions from RTCM seeking guidance from us as to the need or the want of Ayala members to develop the 2.4 broadcast standard, which is a generic message set to allow corrections for all different satellite constellations. That topic's come up. We've got members that really do want to see that work progress, but it's understanding the implications of that. It's an interesting discussion. We at one point we thought we'd be able to get an output out giving some guidance out of this meeting, but we've decided that we need some further discussions, and we'll hold that over to ENG16. But if you, as an organisation, or your organisation has a particular view on that, please do get involved so that we can try and provide the appropriate guidance from ENG16. The only comment just to say on the work within this topic, the work on the guideline will continue via email intersessionally. So if you'd like to get involved in that, either the email discussions or if we have a one-day workshop to try and progress that, please do again let me know via email, and I'll make sure you're on the distribution list. Thank you. So moving to item 343 on augmentation, that's been completed previously. Likewise, the following work item had previously been merged, so we'll skip on those. So moving to high accuracy systems, we considered there the update to the existing guideline 1127 on high accuracy positioning and ranging. Updates were considered and made, and it was really a case of bringing that document up to date. So we have a version of that which we now believe is ready to go out in the sign of dissent process. So thank you very much again for the group involved and leading that. We then come on to looking at documents under our different control. And as Simon said, we started a very initial review of the Worldwide Radio Navigation Service. We'd hoped to do a bit more within this session, but unfortunately run out of time. And we also started some consideration on a guideline for MAS, which I expect we'll pick up again at ENG16. Both key topics that we need to work on further. We then have a session looking at sort of updating relevant areas and understanding what's going on. And we had a good discussion about the potential use of GNSS to support three-dimensional positioning, something that's quite interesting and in use for inland waterways and aspects like that. And it's potentially an area that we could look to consider further within the new work programme, of what areas and what's the implication for us, potentially under the high accuracy work item again. So that's something that we'll take through into the plan for the new work item in the new programme. So moving to the closing ends of our work up for this meeting. Task 361 was looking at liaison with sister organisations. So we had a discussion about the work of the IMO correspondence group on the development of generic GNSS receiver performance standards, something that our working group supports on behalf of Ayala. So I gave an update of what's happening there. And we recognised the need and the ongoing action to update ITU M823. But again, we run out of time in this session to be able to consider that, and we'll pick that up again at ENG16. We did review input papers on the IMO NCSR position regarding VDES R mode and digital communications. It's an input paper shared to us from ENAV seeking our support and thoughts. We reviewed that draft input and provided a copy back to ENAV as a liaison note for further consideration. The idea here is that to be able to take the VDES R mode topic and digital communication items forward into the next World Radio Conference, we need a strong position from the IMO. Otherwise, it's likely not to be picked up on the agenda. And ENAV is seeking to develop, with everyone's support, an input paper from Ayala to encourage the IMO to give it a stronger position in their report to the ITU going forward. That'll be picked up again within the ENAV working group. So again, there's a liaison note to go forward, but the ENAV members involved are already aware of the content. So they can start their initial discussions. Moving on then to task 371. If we can scroll down a bit, please, Amy. We looked at a number of different topics under here. This is a little bit of a catch-all of all the different areas that we could be invited to consider. We're working to support the Secretariat and other Ayala committees in the development of the maritime services and how that can go forward from the point of how we consider resilient positioning, navigation and timing, and how that fits in with the proposed ATA navigation service. There's ongoing meetings for that. We also had an interesting meeting looking at the potential impact of solar parks, so new floating solar arrays or quite a few large areas of solar arrays, and they introduced both a radio and a visual implication. It's clear, I think, that we need to do some discussions there, probably with all of the working groups within ENG. I think it's going to affect us all in some way, and probably with ARM. We agreed that we'd pick that up further at ENG16, and we'll probably put together an input paper that just tries to coordinate and bring everybody together on that. Finally, we reviewed the cybersecurity workshop report and agreed that it's got real importance across all of the different areas that we're working, and something that we need to be aware of taking forward. So that's a summary of the work that we've done over this almost 3-week period. And thank you very much to all of the people involved in supporting the work of Working Group 3, but especially the task group leaders and Michelle as my vice chair. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much to you and Michelle and all your team there. Really interesting stuff, and such, I have the privilege as chair of the committee to see the variety of technologies being developed. If I may use my privilege for a second, Alan, just a couple of questions. Really good to see the RPNT liaison note that you're looking to develop at ENG16 to IMO. I think that will be timely, and I think that will be welcome there. And secondly, and I know because we have some PAT members on screen here, and we have Hideki Noguchi from ENAV, chairman of ENAV. So the RTCM message development for DGNSS was discussed at PAT 42, and we know it is there's not a clear discussion there. There's not a clear position. So we very much look forward at PAT to, I see you're going to discuss this further at ENG16, and we look forward to that, the outcome of that discussion to see if we can get some clarity. And also, because I saw Hideki's name here, we look forward from ENAV for the mass guideline framework that we can work on. I think that's going to be a good document there for future reference for everyone. So thank you, Alan. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move on to working group 4, looking at heritage and culture. And
Sorry,
I've suddenly got an echo coming back at me. You may recall that the heritage, or the heritage was referred to as heritage and legacy, but it's been agreed now that we changed the name to heritage and culture, and that is the technical domain reference now and will be in the new standard. So I'm very pleased to hand over to Peter Hill and Chonghan Kim, if Chonghan is there, to talk us through the activities of Working Group 4, please. Peter, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Simon. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Peter.
Are you hearing me all right?
Yes, I can hear you very well, and I can see the screen.
Lovely. Yes, we had an excellent ENG15 at Working Group 4. I was particularly delighted with the amount of participants. We had 29 people, which is certainly a record since my involvement, from 13 nationalities, and there was some really strong representation there. And thank you all for all those who took part. I really enjoyed your company and input, and there was some very, very good work done. So scrolling down to 12.1, the Heritage Seminar. This is something that's been on the burner for a while and has been disrupted by the COVID pandemic and so on. And we've been looking at how it could be brought back to life. And Alberto Pilasana from Brazil has been working on a potential online seminar, but it's now proposed to have an in-person seminar, possibly a hybrid one, heritage seminar running over 2 days on the Saturday the 27th of May and Sunday 28th of May 2023, immediately preceding the 20th Ayala conference in Rio de Janeiro. So if anybody here knows of anybody or would be interested in partaking in that or giving a seminar, a presentation, please make yourself known to myself or Alberto, and your involvement will be very much welcomed. But we're hoping that if that goes ahead by having it immediately preceding Ayala conference, that will make participation easy for those who do wish to. Moving down to 12.2, just to clarify, it was a big discussion at previous ENG14 about the future direction, but we had it confirmed from PAP that Ayala's desire was to see that continue as it has been, as an informally awarded accolade, rather than a more competitive scheme. So that was noted, and that's the direction we're proceeding down. We've been very fortunate, 12.3, we've been very fortunate since the inception of Ayala Heritage Lighthouse of the Year to have Korea's involvement in designing and resourcing some wonderful plaques or artworks to award recipients. And they're continuing to resource that until 2026. However, we're keen to establish a set design for that, for a plaque that would be ongoing and relatively inexpensive to keep going once Korea ceases to resource that. So we received a welcome presentation from Korea and a proposal for a new design for a plaque, which we were delighted to support. Turning to 12.4, and a big chunk of our work inevitably was on selecting our commendation for Ayala Heritage Lighthouse of the Year 2022. And it was wonderful that we've now got 33 Ayala Heritage Lighthouses to consider, all up there on our website. There were 6 additional nominations this year, but in total now we had nominations from 17 member nations spread across 6 continents, and so it's becoming an ever more complex problem in us selecting a commendation from so many worthy heritage lighthouses. You will see in the report that we whittled it down to 3. Cap Spartel Lighthouse in Morocco, Homegot Lighthouse in Korea, and Sunberg Lighthouse in Scotland. All 3 terrific heritage lighthouses. And you'll see that we're making the commendation to Ayala Council that Ayala Heritage Lighthouse of the year 2022 be Homegot Lighthouse in Korea. At this stage, of course, that is only a commendation, and it will be Ayala Council's decision. So if we could just see, perhaps see, there we go. That's Homegot Lighthouse, right next to the Aton Museum in Korea. But I shan't go through that in more detail. Certainly, if once Council confirm their decision for Ayala Heritage Lighthouse the year 2022, there'll be a lot more publicity and celebration of that. So scrolling down to 12.5. Here we address a slight problem of timings. You'll see we're here in March, mid-March already, only now making our commendation for Ayala Heritage Lighthouse of the year 2022, which won't be confirmed until later in the year at Ayala Council. By the time it's confirmed, we're halfway through the year already, which is slightly unfortunate. So we considered a proposal that instead of making the commendation in the spring ENG meeting, we would in future make that commendation in the autumn ENG meeting in relation to the following year. And that would enable Council to consider that commendation and make a formal decision in December preceding the year, and therefore the Ayala Heritage Lighthouse of the Year and the recipient nation would have a whole year to celebrate that, building up to a formal presentation as it is now at World Aton Day. Hideki Noguchi, you'll see, has produced a paper to Council setting out this proposed change, and thank you for that. We considered what better ways to publicise and promote Heritage Lighthouse of the Year to raise its profile further, and various ideas were considered. But one of the best ways, of course, is for participants here to spread the word amongst their organisations and amongst organisations that you're connected with. So I'd be very grateful if you would do all of that. Aside from that, the usual sort of methods were considered, but also a letter to the IMO Executive Committee is going to be drafted for next ENG. 12.7, the Ayala Lighthouse database, which is part of the Ayala Heritage websites, which I hope everybody here has had a chance to look at. It's a very colourful and hopefully informative website. And yes, we updated as part of our work. We updated the web page to include the 6 additional nominations as Ayala Heritage Lighthouses. So all 33 Ayala Heritage Lighthouses are now there, with lovely photos and lots of background information about them. I'd encourage you all to have a look. And yes, I think it's already been mentioned. Simon's already mentioned Jacques Monchar's presentation on the 200th year anniversary of Fresnel Lens work at Cordoue. He will be looking at sort of how we can celebrate that more, and there might be connections going in with the Heritage Seminar I mentioned earlier. There might be some information going on the website. We've got to look at all of that. But if any, there's all sorts of ideas as well about coordinating lights to celebrate that 200th year anniversary in 2023. these wonderful lens systems that were developed and that are now found throughout the world, even to this day, in most lighthouse authorities. So if you're interested in joining in those celebrations, please get in contact with him, or you can go via myself, and I'll put you in touch, and hopefully we can coordinate it from there. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you to Vice Chair Jonken Kim as ever, and thank you once again for all the participants in making it such an enjoyable time.
Thank you, Peter. Very uplifting report. Good to see these heritage and culture sections being vibrant, and thank you. I think a great legacy from the ancient declaration there. Right, so that's the 4 working group reports, and we've all had a chance to look on the silent approval section of the file share, and this report here will go for 1 week now for any comment, which will come through to Jaime, and then the report will be finalized. So further down the report here, we have a list of the output papers and participants and all the usual administrative documentation. And the next meeting is in October in Paris, and we look forward to seeing as many of you as who can to actually come to Paris and see you over a cup of coffee, and that will be very welcome. And I think it really now we come to the end of the ENG15. I don't know whether Francis or Omar would like to say a few words to close up.
Well, Simon, not much to say other than thank you so much to all of the leadership of the committee and all the participants for this fantastic work. I've followed your meeting here and the 2 plenaries, and I think it's excellent results. I'm really impressed by all the papers that will actually go to council after these virtual meetings. It has proved to be very efficient, but as Simon and the other chairs mentioned, we look so much forward to seeing you again in Paris. And I think really especially in international meetings, face-to-face meetings are really the preferred option. So we hope that you will all participate at the next session of the ENG committee meeting in Paris. Thank you so much to all, and especially to you, Simon, for fantastic and great leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francis. So a big thank you to you all, in particular, Michelle Cusqua, Vice Chair, who's very supportive, and thank you, Michelle, for being there and your work, and most welcome. Thank you. So goodbye, everybody. We now we have yes. I should have said Owen has put his hand up. Owen Lahan from Irish Lights. Owen is going to pass his new, aren't you, Owen? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I just, Simon, if I could just take the opportunity, as I had hoped that this meeting might have been in person, but that wasn't to be the case. But this is my last meeting of the ENG committee. I retire from Irish Lights at the end of May, and I just wanted to sort of acknowledge all the support and all the friendships that I've met over the years at the ENG committee. I wish the committee, it's been a privilege to be involved. I wish the committee continued success, and I think the role takes on a much greater importance now that Ayala is moving to an IGO status. We will be submitting a paper, an abstract for conference around modern equipment in traditional lighthouses, so that will support the work of the committee. But I just want to take the opportunity to say farewell to everybody. Sorry it has to be by Zoom or by Teams, but I wish you all very well. Stay safe. And today is a national holiday here in Ireland. It's the feast of St. Patrick. And I just wanted to wish everybody around the world a happy St. Patrick's Day. And thank you for all your friendship over the years.
Thank you. For me, it's been a pleasure working with you across the water there. We'll speak before you go, but it's been an absolute pleasure. You're a real gentleman. Thank you. So just to say goodbye, I don't know if Minsu has the bell to ring, but I look forward to ringing it in person in October. And so if you want to come on screen and say goodbye, people, and good night, Malcolm. And for the different times of year, and I would think Paul Muller will be going off for a strong cup of early morning coffee now. Okay, so goodbye, everybody, and a pleasure to see your faces. And
Yeah.
And we see you again, hopefully. Oh, there's the bell. Minsu, go on and do the honors. Well done, Minsu. Thank you.
All the best, Owen.
Cheers,
All the best.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Happy
Simon.
St. Patrick's Day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Simon.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye to everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Marco. Hello, Marco. Hey, Minsu, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Minsu? Yeah, my apologies for this afternoon. I have double booked. So I'm sure you will. There's been good input on the Maritime Service paper. I'm sure that will be good.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I will send you your apology to the meeting. No
Thank
problem. Did you hear the bell anyway, Simon?
Well, not really, because I think the microphone cut out the sudden sound, I think.
I think the noise cancelling function works actually. So it does really work.
Too effective, yeah. Okay. See you about. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Peter.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Simon.
We're down to the hardcore now.
Happy St. Patrick's.
Yeah, thank you.
Peter, are you still there? I can see your picture.
Peter Schneider. I can see Peter Schneider, but yes, he's on screen. Peter, are you there? Peter Schneider? You're frozen.
He may have left. I'll catch him another time.
Okay.
Well done. Thank you, Simon.
Okay.
And everybody.
Thanks, I'll see you about. I'll be right. Cheers, Jaime. Jaime, thank you very much. Cheers, man. Bye-bye.